Everything's great except for my driver. I need to work on my driver. I've heard this phrase 1,000 times over the last 90 days, and I just want to take a second and explain why you might be swinging your irons a little bit better than your driver, or why the dispersion is greater with your driver than it is with your irons. So if you hit your irons really good, but your driver not so much, pay attention, this might be you. First thing we need to understand is there's a path and a club face that tells the ball where to go, right? So the club face can be open, it can be square, it can be closed, and the path can be pretty straight. It can be inside out, or it can be outside in. I want you to remember that. So when we hit a golf ball, I like everyone to picture the golf swing as a circle or a hula hoop, right? And so this hula hoop, we don't swing the club straight up over the golf ball and then straight back down. We actually swing around our body a little bit. So this hula hoop is slanted a little bit. Call it 60 degrees, 45 degrees, whatever you want to call it, okay? So where this hula hoop is pointed is very important, but also where we hit the ball on this hula hoop is very important. So if you look about right here on the right side of this hula hoop, that part of the hula hoop is moving down, but it's also moving out. Now, if I laid it like this, it would only be moving down. And if I laid it like this, it would only be moving out. But when I have it at an angle like this part of the hula hoop right here is moving a little bit down and a little bit out. Why is that important? Well, if my swing is pretty straight at the target, but I'm hitting the ball on the back side of the circle, my relative club path will be a little bit out. And so my club path will be positive. Now, we know most golfers tend to swing a little bit over the top, tend to get a little bit steep, but if you swing a little bit down on the ball, that can help neutralize that. So that might be the reason the irons end up going pretty straight. But now we've got driver, and what are we all told to do with driver? We got to move that ball position forward in the stance. Okay, well, again, if I took this circle and I moved to the front side of it, well, you can see at this point in the circle, is the circle moving up? Yes. Right? I'm hitting the ball a little bit on the upswing. Okay, so this is where I'm striking the ball right there where the stick's hitting the thing. But if I look at it from this angle, you can see that circle is also moving a little bit to the left. Again, if it was straight up and down, it would be moving straight at the target, but it's not. It's on a little bit on the front side. So my resultant club path with the ball more forward, is going to be a little bit more of an outside-in club path. Why is that important? Well, if you're someone who hits your irons pretty straight, again, you're hitting on the back side of the circle. That's maybe helping your path be less over the top, less outside in. But when you put a driver in your hand, you slide that ball position forward and you might be hitting up on it. Well, now you're hitting on the front side of the circle and the resultant club path is a little bit more to the left. So that's one reason you could be hitting your irons really good, but struggling with your driver. Now, number two, obviously the club face plays a really big role too. And if we look at like how these clubs are kind of built, there's a lot more mass sitting behind the shaft with the driver. So what does that mean? Well, if we look at this club, there's a lot of mass over here and not so much mass up here. We look at an iron, well, there's some mass sitting behind the face, but not as much. And so why is this important? Well, whether you want to admit it or not, when we hit a golf ball, there's some twisting happening with the club face. So as we come down into the ball, we are actively, whether you know it or not, there's some twisting happening that's closing the club face. Well, first of all, when the club's moving faster, and there's more mass sitting behind the shaft, it gets a little harder to torque that face and close that face down a little bit more. But I'll tell you what, with a wedge, with a 9-iron, with an 8-iron, there's not as much mass back there. It's actually quite a bit easier to get that face a little bit more square, a little bit more closed. All right, so we have these problems where our driver wants to maybe slice and our irons go pretty straight. How can we start to fix this, especially with driver? Well, number one, you can absolutely play that ball position a little bit forward. But you don't have to go crazy. Like I see a lot of ball positions up here out past the left foot. It's really hard to not have a resulting club path moving to the left at that point in the swing. I would just tell you, let's have a nice standard driver ball position just inside or just on that left ankle, left heel, inside the left big toe. That's really good. And then also make sure our shoulders are nice and square at setup. We don't want to have that ball position too forward. We don't want to have the shoulders too open. The last thing I'll tell you is to make sure that we can counteract that club face wanting to stay open and that required extra torque to close the face. Well, especially if you're a player that slices the ball a lot, I would recommend trying to overdo this a lot. And so what can you do? Honestly, I don't mind this drill for players where you hold the club with your left hand, try twisting it open with your right hand and then closing it with your lead hand. So you can see me, I'm trying to twist this club open and I'm kind of feeding the fault. I'm trying to give my left hand a sensation for what that's like, those muscles that need to fire to torque that club face a little bit more closed as I start down. So if you can just make sure that ball position isn't too far forward, if you can strengthen those muscles or work those muscles to get that sensation for torquing that face, closing that face a little bit more on the way down, you're going to have a resultant club path that's maybe a little straighter. You're going to be able to square that club face up a little bit easier.